Hello, hello. We have a lovely new intimate seating arrangement tonight. It's very special to see all of you. Welcome to the American Library in Paris. My name is Emily Biggs. I'm the programs manager here, and I'm delighted to be welcoming to tonight's Evenings with an Author, Emmanuel Dongala and Will Cox, to speak about the wonderful new English translation of The Stonebreakers. If this is your first time at the library, welcome. We're thrilled to see you. We've been in operation for over 100 years. We host events like this 2 to 3 times a week. We also host workshops, book clubs. We have an annual book award, and I highly encourage you to check out our October and September events, which you'll find information about in your seats. We have some very exciting ones on the horizon. And if this is your first time here and you're not a member, I highly encourage you to become one. We are the largest English language lending library on the European continent. If you live here in Paris, you know how expensive it is to buy English books here, so join the library instead, or do both. On to our brilliant speakers tonight. Oh, and a quick note, after 45 minutes tonight, we're going to open this conversation up to questions from our in-person audience and our Zoom audience who's in that camera right there. Thank you, Zoom audience, for joining us. So start thinking about your questions now. On to our speakers tonight. Emmanuel Dongala has just received the Grand Prix Hervé Delune from the Académie Française, which is a very big deal if you don't speak French. That translates to big deal. He has been a Guggenheim Fellow in fiction. He's spoken about his work to numerous publications such as NPR's Fresh Air. He was born in the Congo in 1941 and then came to the United States in 1997 during the Civil War and was offered a professorship at Bard College. Has gone on to have an incredible career in both literature and science. So he is a man of many fields, a man of many forms of knowledge. He's been called the most accomplished novelist from Africa since Chinua Achebe. So we are so lucky to have him here tonight. Yes, thank you. Applaud. And he's in conversation with Will Mountain Cox, who is the author of With Paris in Mind and another forthcoming work, which is going to be released in a couple weeks, and which we may be perhaps organizing something about the library in the spring, so keep your eyes peeled for that. His writing has been published in Forever Magazine, Hobart, Spectra Poets, The Drunken Canal, and Volume 1 Brooklyn, and he is the co-founder of a literary review called the Belleville Park Pages. So we are thrilled to have Will here with tonight. The Stonebreakers, which was originally published by Actes Sud, and translated into English by Sarah Hanneberg, has been adopted to the stage in Africa, Europe, and South America, and was named the best French novel of 2010 by Lire. And we are so delighted to be celebrating its first appearance in English tonight. It's just such an honor to be able to have this conversation here in this reading room. So thank you all for joining us. Can we have one more round of applause for our speakers? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here, Mr. Dongala. So your novel, The Stonebreakers, follows a group of women who quarry gravel that is going to be used for their growing country's new airport runway. Due to unlivable pay and soaring profits for the men in power above them, these women lead a collectivist labor uprising against their oppressive and corrupt corporate bosses demanding higher pay. That's a short summary of the book. This novel was first published in 2010 as Photo de groupe au bord du fleuve by Actes Sud. We have a couple copies here to show. The original and the new. So that book was published in 2010, and within a year of its publication, the world saw anti-corruption protests and revolutions of the Arab Spring in countries like Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, Bahrain, Morocco, to name just a few. And at the same time, in the same year, we witnessed the anti-capitalist, anti-corruption protests of the Occupy movement in countries like the US, Canada, France, England, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, also just to name a few. So my first question is, how does it feel to have written a novel that sparked so many revolutions?
giving me too much credit.
but in all seriousness, what was in the water for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to thank you. It's an honor for me to come here because I didn't even know there was an American library in Paris. And I've been coming to Paris for many times. So thank you again. Okay. No, I mean, it's sometimes, things are just in the air like that, Like when I wrote my previous novel, which was called Johnny Mad Dog, about child soldiers, all of a sudden everybody was writing about child soldiers. And so I'm just happy that it caught, what's going on at the time. It was in sync with the preoccupation of the times, yeah.
Did you feel, were you seeing things happening around you when you wrote it, or was it just a natural conflagration?
Well, actually, this novel come out of the experience I lived in the Civil War in the Congo. The book I wrote before that, it's called Johnny Mad Dog, about child soldiers. And during that Civil War, when we were running, I come from Brazzaville, the big city, and some geography, the former French Congo and former Belgian Congo, and the two capitals, one is Brazzaville and the other one is Kinshasa, and I mean in Brazzaville. So when the city, the Civil War started, I mean, it was shooting everywhere, and we have to run away. So we have to, with my family, we tried to run away through the forest, the equatorial forest. It wasn't easy. But then what I noticed was that we were all suffering, men, kids, women, etc. But I noticed that women were suffering more than men. And some of the men, were just running away, like, the hand in the pocket, while the women had, kids in the back, and packages and all that. And then when we were attacked, and some of these violence specific to women, like rape and all that. And so when I came out of that, I said, well, I have to first to write this story about these child soldiers, how the kids were terrorizing us. So I wrote Johnny Mad Dog. And then I said, now that I've written that, I have to write a book specifically to honor the suffering of all these women. So this is why I, from child soldiers to the women's struggle, yeah.
I'm also interested in the fact that, in 13 years between the original publication and the translation, the world is very different. The news coming out of the Congo is very different. I'm also thinking this is a book about people who are excavating natural resources, and we are learning a lot just now about things like lithium mines in Zimbabwe and Namibia, and cobalt mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo. How does it feel to see this book getting a new life in 2023?
Well, actually, the situation of these women haven't changed. If you listen to the news in the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, I mean, every day, they're fighting, they're raped. So things haven't changed much. So the book is still relevant now. And but you're talking about diamond and all that. But for these women, the stone, the oil, the cobalt, the uranium, whatever you want, that's what makes them live. So so that's why they were struggling to have a fair price for that. And it was very difficult to write it for me because I didn't know how to write about women, So the first thing I did was a research, not a literary research, but I went to the riverbank. There are real women there, breaking stones, and tried to talk to them. And at the beginning, they were very wary, very, this man, what does he want? We're suffering with his big talk and all that. So, And then I went several times to see them, and imagine them, lots of women on the riverbank breaking stone, the sun, without any gloves, without any glasses, and lots of it. And so I started a little bit by, you have to excuse me, bribing them in the way that I brought them cool water, refrigerated water, and they were happy. And then confidence came, and they started telling me their stories. And the difficulty is that I said, how I cannot write about one woman, so I wanted to write about the suffering of all these women, That's why the book, it's about 10, 11, 12 women. I don't remember their number. So that's how I look at the book. But it was very, very hard, because maybe I'm ahead of the question you're going to ask me. But so how do you write about the suffering of women when you're not a woman or a woman? So I read lots of books by women. And then I read paper about the actual protest of women in Kenya, in Congo, whatever. Struggle that, and then I was ready to all that. I was ready to start, and then I started writing, of course, the third person. The omniscient writers, knows what's going on in the minds of everybody. She started, and it didn't work. There was too much distance between these women and me. So I said, okay, I'll write to the first person. And after 2 chapters, I all of a sudden I realized, it's incredible. I realized that I wasn't a woman. I realized that I was a man. So I said, oh my God. So I dropped it. It didn't sound right, So, and I left the book, and then I don't know how I started hearing this voice, this woman speaking. I said, and then Eureka! I said, aha! I'm not going to write. I'm not going to write. I'm just going to transcribe that woman is talking to herself. Okay, Miriana, you have to wake up this morning. You have to do this. You have to do this. This is why the book is in the second person. Yeah. So I'm far away from your question, but
no, that's great. I think I'll come to all those points.
Yeah,
we can break them all down. I wanted to read. I'm going to read a little
sure.
excerpt from Mariana. So this part comes about a third of the way through the book. They have the group of women have started their movement, their protests. It's grown a little bit. It surprised them by how fast it's growing. And so this is the narrator, Mariana, speaking at a protest rally, basically. Dear sisters and comrades, we are women trying to earn our living by breaking and selling stone. Among us are women who went to school and women who did not know how to read. There are young women and older women. There are married women, single women, widows, and divorcees. We do not expect the state to pay our salary. No, we are working women, and all we want is our merchandise to be bought at a fair price. The crowd's applause gives you even more confidence. You want to speak to all the women who are there with you, whether they are from the quarry or not, but also to the men and women spies who are present. You continue by providing the background for the past 2 days for those who are not aware of it. You talk about the new airport, about the upsurge in price of stone, about your refusal to sell, and about the violent repression. And you continue, unity is strength. It is because there were dozens of us outside the prison that they released our friends Mukietu, Moyalo, and Osolo. I am telling you, my sisters, that is the way we will get back our bags they stole from us. Those men who stole our gravel think that because we are women, we are going to keep quiet as usual. When they beat us at home, we say nothing. When they throw us out of our homes and take everything we own when our husbands die, we say nothing. When they pay us less than they are paid, we say nothing. When they rape us and we file charges against them and they tell us that we asked for it, we still say nothing. And now they think they can seize our rocks by force, and once again we will say nothing. No, not this time. They are wrong. We have had enough. Enough. I I'm going to touch on a lot of the things that you said, but I wanted to start with something I found very interesting, is that the book takes place in what I found to be a slightly unidentified place. The country is never specified, but it is familiar. It feels slightly fictional, definitely a Central-ish, West Africa-ish country, but nothing specific. And well, there are very real stories that come into the book, and there are real countries that are noted. The specific country we are in is not. So I was wondering where this book takes place in your eyes.
Of course, you guess it's in Africa, in Central Africa, but I didn't name the country, which gave me some more freedom of imagination, because if I said it's in the Congo, readers from the Congo will say, we identify, we try to find it's a Roman clay. It's not. So, but it's just this area of Congo. But the important thing was that in that country, I tried to describe the suffering of all women. All these women, yeah. So, and that's why I didn't take one woman, but as I said, I take a dozen, because each one comes with its own story. Actually, I tell you the truth. I didn't, okay, I didn't know how to write the book, and then I realized the you, but the real thing which got me going from this book, because I didn't know how to start it, was, you won't believe this, Anna Karenina of Tolstoy. Why? It's the first sentence of Anna Karenina, which says, all happy families are happy. There's no problem. They're all happy the same way. But all suffering family, each one comes with his own suffering, own way of suffering. And I say, aha, I got it. So all these women, they come to this place where they're going to break the stone, but each comes with its own suffering, its own path. That's why they, as you just read, they are divorcee, they are people who didn't go to school, there are some, etc., etc. Yeah.
The novel is interspersed with radio programs,
right.
Radio news. The characters will be having a discussion, and it might lapse, and they'll turn on the radio, or they're getting ready in the morning, and it turned on the radio, and they're all things that are very real, and they come from all over the world. And I found it to be a really interesting plot device. In relation to the fact that we are in this fictional country, but we're always being hit with the non-fiction, with the non-fictional stories. So I was wondering where that came from.
Okay, yes. One of my ambition again was to talk about all the different kind of suffering women confront in the world. So, but in the area the book's going on, there are some suffering which women do not have in our country. For instance, in the Congo, you don't stone women for adultery. It doesn't exist. In West Africa, there's this female mutilation. In the Congo, it doesn't exist. So etc., etc. In other countries in Asia. In Pakistan, for instance, remember the story, young girl cannot go to school. So I want to bring all that in the novel. So the way to bring it is in the radio. So when they listen to the news, in Somalia, they just stoned a woman because they accuse her adultery. In Pakistan, they just shot a woman, that woman, what's her name again? I forgot. So this is why the radio is very important. It brings the world, outside world, to the that novel, that country, that place.
I'll bring in the next excerpt I'd like to read because I think it goes to what you're saying. So this book is an exploration of feminist action. It's a grassroots union that practices self-empowerment. They decide they're going to fight for their financial rights, and they take action. But as you've said, there's this wide array, maybe 10 to 12 different stories. And I found those stories to be probably the most powerful bit about the book. The trajectory of the political action is one thing, but connecting with what type of people make up political action, I really like. So I'm going to read the story of Ma Bileko, who is an older woman in the group. After a year, she had become a real businesswoman. She had opened several stores, and to keep them stocked, she traveled several times a year in Asia to the Chungking mansions of Hong Kong and the trade centers of Guangzhou in mainland China. She never missed the Dubai Trade Festival, where the prices of goods were reduced by half. She was making so much money that she had become the breadwinner, her husband's ridiculously low primary school teacher's salary only supplemental, a kind of pocket change. She had about 20 employees, from store managers to caretakers, who looked after her new villa. She drove a Mercedes, and, like any privileged member of society, she had become overweight. In turn, so had her husband. As a matter of fact, people only called her by the respectful nickname of Mama Kilo, a way to recognize her opulence literally as well as figuratively. She was respected because she had become rich honestly, through her work and her business smarts, and not by relying on the support of crooked politicians who stole from the state coffers with impunity. Even though, of course, she had her own network of customs officers and tax inspectors whose palms she greased from time to time so that they would close their eyes at a lot of things. When her husband died, she had almost no money left. The enormous expenses she had incurred as she tried to save the life of her companion of so many years, with whom she had raised a girl and 2 boys, had scrapped every last penny of her savings. Her business was on the brink of bankruptcy. In a market as trendy and competitive as electronics, several months of absence was suicide. Competitors selling junk laptops, pirated CDs, and DVDs now occupied the void she had left. But that financial and commercial debacle certainly would not have landed her on this riverbank where she was reduced to filling bags of gravel to survive, or on this hill she had to climb every night as she is doing now before you, her back broken under the weight of her brushwood. With her fearlessness and experience, she surely would have bounced back if the family of her late husband had not swooped down on everything she owned like vultures on carcasses. I found her story very impressive because of the height that she had reached and the depths she had fallen. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about, you told us about how you met these women in real life, but about people like Ma Bileko.
Yeah, this is one of the tragedies of women in Africa. I can say in Africa, not only a part of Africa, the same thing in West Africa. I mean, when they have no rights, when the husband dies, the family or the husband grabs everything, even things they got together, and there are lots of fight, lots of trying to put legislation, but sometimes, more often, the legislation on the paper doesn't count. It's a customary with Trumps, and for instance, the parliament has passed a law that when for instance, marriage, what we call the dowry, should be, 50,000 francs. That's about, $100 or so. But they swindle parents. You have to pay 100,000, 1 million. You get to ruin. I mean, what's on the paper, Constitution doesn't count. It's the customary law which trumps, and this is the main problem. You can have the best constitution in the world, the best legislation, but as long as customary law trumps, these women will always be suffering. So this is the case of Ma Bileko, a rich woman, and when her husband died, the family, the husband's family grabbed everything. So this is one of the type of suffering, and the other suffering, like the woman which was accused of being a witch by her own kids, because even the family, for instance, let's say you have 10 kids, and then 3, 4, 5 died because of condition, well, they start accusing you, you the reason why these kids are dying, you're a witch, you're so, and then you ostracize, etc. So all these type of things, this is what I brought in the book.
I found that aspect very interesting because it's something that through all stages of this process of rising up against power, you are exposed to more and more stories of ruin, patriarchal power. Yeah. And it's this book, honestly, for me, about ruin and how easy it is to fall in this country where the book is taking place, but also these traumas are being inflicted by men almost always. There's sickness, pain, instability, there's cheating, theft, rape, violence, exposure to yeah. And I, for me as a male reader, it left me questioning the type of power structures that I am a part of without maybe even noticing it. And as you said, you tried to start the book and realized you're not a woman. So I was wondering, for me, it was a book that felt like there was a lot to learn in its production. So I was wondering how much you learned about yourself as a man coming from this country in writing these stories of women being,
Yeah, and the best compliment I ever had was a woman at the book meeting like that, and she came up to me and she said, when I read the book, I never realized that it was written by a man, you really did write it? I said, yes. I thought it was written by a woman, so that's the best compliment I ever had. Yeah, I have learned a lot. I mean, working with women, understanding this. You see, I have an intellectual comprehension, and, fight for them. But when you go to that riverbank, look at these women, how they're working. It's hard, and you bring them cold water, cool water. They're so happy just because you brought them a refrigerated water, etc. And you really feel close to them. And I learned a lot, and it changed me because how can I put it? I really understand now when women say that there's this discrimination, the male's power structure and all that. I really understand now. I didn't wait for the woke movement to know.
I thought that was interesting as well, because the way the book concludes is it moves towards just a question of power structures generally. Yes. Some of the last big hurdles that Mariana has to get over to push for her movement are from women gatekeepers. And I thought it was really interesting. These last two people who really challenge her the most are women in power and women in the power structure of this country. And I was interested to know, like, how did you, how did that story arrive at that place?
Well, because I realized that, I mean, women also, they're not saints. I mean, women in the power structure can be harsher on other women, and those women who are in the structure of power, they try to imitate the man, It was tough, like everybody remember Margaret Thatcher. But so this is why in the book you have this minister and the wife of the president building power. So and in the book also, we're human. This jealousy among the women and all that. So I try to not to make any caricature. Real people with all their problems, and yeah, that's what I'd like to do.
I think, in speaking about masculinity and how we experience a story like this, and I'm going to go back to something you said earlier, is the use of the second person, the use of the you. It especially over a 300-page book, it was very, it kind of had a magical effect on the way I placed myself as reading the book. And so I was wondering, you spoke a little bit about how it started as a first-person book. You realized it wasn't working. You went to second, but in that moment of deciding to change, like what was going on in your head? How did switching to the you make you feel as the storyteller, but also almost like the story receiver?
Yeah. A humble scribe, listening to that woman talking. So I'm not there. The writer is not there, and also, and for those who know French, and it was hard for me for the grammar, and I had to remind every time I write, it's female, and because I always written as a man, and I don't know whether you understand what I mean. You have to the adjectives, the how you, yeah.
You've never had to build a sentence
so that's
like that,
also
right?
Another difficulty I didn't realize, when I was writing this as a with the voice of a woman. Yeah.
I was speaking recently with an Italian writer named Sarah Marzullo, who used a term that I found very interesting in fiction called the first-person industry. The total experience of self, the look for the search for stories that we see ourselves reflected in, the need for our experiences to be reflected in anything we consume. And something I loved about this book is it makes it you. So I'm being placed in this space very directly. It is a life that I have been nowhere near, and I think about the voice a lot because I see a lot of autofiction becoming a mainstream product. It's holding up this weird experience of the world where we almost don't want to imagine anything but our own life that we live. So I was wondering how, in experiencing writing a full book in the second person, how you feel about the first person now and the I now in the first person industry.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Actually, it depends on the story, but I'm not the type of writer who's writing a lot about myself. My previous book was about child soldiers. The latest one, the Bridge Tower Sonata, it was about music. Beethoven, who had a black friend, and so I don't write about myself. So I can't really answer your question about how I feel like writing. I
would like to end my last question about yourself, because we talked a few days ago and you were telling me your story specifically regarding the Civil War in the Republic of Congo. And you yourself did live a very difficult and traumatic moment of fleeing, of losing everything you had, of being, losing momentarily a child and trying to find them. And then also a very odd, polar change when you were first arriving in America, escaping that war. So I was wondering what your first person experience of this story helped in regards to maybe the governmental criticism, the social criticism that this book is full of. How did your life make you feel?
Well, actually, that's why the personal come in. I don't think if I didn't live through that civil war in the Congo, I may not have written these two books, the Johnny Maddock and the Stonebreaker. Yeah, really, it was really a personal experience, and And I told you a funny story. So I was in Brazzaville, and then the fight started. I mean, you have kids, 10, 12 years old with guns, giving orders to kids, to men, to people like us. We were scared with these kids. And so we ran to the forest. And after, I don't know, after 2-3 days, we were so hungry, we wanted to eat. And then we say, let's stop at this village, to buy some food, some fruit, some bananas. And also, we were there buying something to eat. And then we saw this car coming and stopped, wanted to buy food too. And a colonel who was running away, his army was defeated because there were two sections. And he was running away and he stopped and he looked at me. He said, "Are you Professor Dongala?" I said, "Shall I say yes or no?" Because you never know. I said, yes. Then he said, okay. I have a friend who has a friend who works in the American Embassy who told me that the American Embassy is looking for you. Me? Yeah, sure. That's why he told me. It's not firsthand, it's the friend of a friend. I say, maybe there's something there, And effectively, what happened is that I did my schooling in the U.S. I went to Oberlin College, and then I did my maths in organic chemistry at Columbia University, and then I met some good friends there, among them Philip Roth. And when they learned that I was in trouble, Philip Roth knew the president of Bard College, Borstein, and he said, "I have this friend who's risking his life. Can you hire him?" Yeah? And I was lucky because the Bard College was looking for a chemist, and then he said, "What is that?" And Philip Roth said, "He's a chemist." "Oh, we're looking for a chemist." Well, if you were, I don't know, if you were a historian or doing art history or literature, maybe I could not. But anyway, so they did everything, prepare everything, the visa, the job, and they sent it to the American Embassy in Kinshasa because the embassy was closed in Brazzaville, so we have to go through the river, in dugout canoe, and so this is the first part of the story. And the nice part of the story, and I'll end with that. And so I lost everything. I mean, you were saying, everything. And in philosophy, when they say that material things do not count as etc., it's true, because there's something I really say, I can't do this thing, but I lost them. And I was just happy to be alive. So anyway, I come in this January 15, I remember it was snowing in New York, and Philip Roth was there at the airport waiting for me and took me to the college and did that. And then my family came, and a year later, my family came, and it was Thanksgiving period, So he said, "Oh, okay, when we ran away in the forest, we weren't eating, we were hungry, and all that. And so he took my family, put it in this car. He said, come, I show you America." So he took us to one of these mall where there's a store called Price Chopper, Price Chopper. So we went in at Thanksgiving. We just looked, huge turkey, then pumpkin, everything, lots of food. And we just went, and the kids started just laughing, nervous laughing, and it's just incredible. You come out for total, famine, really, and you see this food wasting that you just say, So this story, a personal story.
What a fun story. The last question I want to ask is, when you were a younger writer, you had some of your books banned by the state. And now you're writing books that are critical of governments, and I was wondering, what is that your life experience as a writer, going from being banned to now being able to criticize and being able to hold people accountable? Like, how does that feel as a trajectory, and what does these books, these political books, feel like now?
Yeah, because my book, I had a short story called The Jazz and Palm Wine, which was banned, and my first book was banned. Yeah, but because it was those one-party states, and then in the 90s, where there's this quiet revolution where the one-party states in Africa, most of them, just fell. So now they're not banned anymore. I mean, it's very funny when a collection of short story, Jazz Van de Palm was banned, and I was traveling, and I went to the airport, and they really look in your bag if you don't have. So this soldier, open your book. He looked around, then, okay, there were two of them. And then when one of the two moved away to see something else, he came to me, do you have a copy of Jazz Palm Wine? It's very funny, very funny. Yeah, and I was saved also once. I was driving, and then I was stopped. You run through a red light. There was no red light. It wasn't working. But so, give me your driver. Dongala. Oh, you wrote Joseph Van Vam? I said, yes. Go.
Amazing. Well, I'll leave it there. Open question. Yeah. And happy to take questions from the audience.
Yes, we're now opening it up to questions. So raise your hand high, and I will bring them to you. The microphone, here you go.
It's difficult when you haven't read the book to ask questions, but ask any question you want.
I admit I haven't read the book, but I am going to read the book. Thank you so much. My question is, did you ever bring the book to the women at the riverbank to show them, to tell them the stories that you reflected them in what you wrote? Did you ever bring it to them? And if you did, what kind of response did you get?
Okay. My mother doesn't know how to read, well, at least, and so, but the book came out. So these women, I went to see them, I had a picture with them, etc. But they couldn't read the book. But there was somebody made a play out of the book, and I invited some of them, and they were so happy. Yeah. And the funny thing is that I knew the minister who was take care of women, ministre de la femme, and these big titles. So, and I invited her to the play. She came, and at the end of the play, she told me, "Yeah, you're talking about these women suffering, breaking stone. I know. I'm aware of it. You're not teaching me anything. I know that those women are there. We help them, etc." And the day after that, they sent a camera crew with a minister to meet these women. They never did that before. She was lying, But because of the book, she went and met those women, and I don't know whether she really helped them or not. But so unfortunately, they couldn't read the book. Yeah.
Do we have other questions in the room? Yes.
Hello. So you mentioned that you have like a whole other career in chemistry, organic chemistry, and it's just, I'm so struck by how rare it is to meet someone who is so like deeply accomplished in two like very different fields. And I guess I'm interested in, I stopped taking chemistry when I was in high school because I found it too hard, and I told myself that I just didn't have the head for it. Like I had a literary mind, and I guess I'm wondering, like, for you. does scientific thinking sort of like inform your literary thinking, your novelistic thinking, and vice versa, or are they like totally separate parts of your life?
Okay, first of all, before I answer your question, when I was teaching at Bard College, and one day the president of the college called me and said, listen, the French department is teaching too much Franco-French literature. Can you give a seminar on Francophone literature and all that? And I said, no, I'm a chemist, I'm a scientist. I never taught. So this European mind, have to be especially. So finally, I ended up teaching literature. Seminar in literature 1/3 of the time, and teaching chemistry 2/3 of the time. And even though I had they created a chair in chemistry in natural science for me. So no, I always loved literature. However, lot of scientific things, I bring them into my book. Not this one, but one called Little Boys Come from the Stars, for instance, where there were lots of scientific, but no, they're different, they're separate, and different.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing so much of the personal stuff. It's lovely to hear. I just had a question about a lot of your books are very critical of all these kind of problems. You're very keen to expose the problems in, Africa, unidentified African countries or Congo and so on, the violence, rape, often your books are, they're not afraid to go to all those places. But at the same time, there is an intense thread about French colonialism or just colonialism in general.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask you how you kind of develop both, or in the case of Stonebreakers also, there is a sort of thread. How do you make those connections?
Yeah. My really first book when I was really, quote, militant anti-colonialism is my first novel called, in French, Un fusil dans la main, un poème dans la poche. That's my very first book, revolutionary. And it worked. It became a cult book over the years, because I'm of the generation which came to be after the first generation of independence. So I was in lycée when independence happened. So I'm an old man. So yeah, that was really my big breakthrough revolution. And yeah, through my book, those of us who have been colonized, the sequel of colonialism is always there. And maybe not colonialism per se, but what we call neo-colonialism, And it's already there. If you've been following news in Francophone Africa right now, it's the revolt against French neo-colonialism is very strong. Yes, you're right. The thread is already there. I can't forget it. Yeah. And what else I wanted to say? Yeah. Okay. That. I want to say something, but I forgot. Okay.
More questions in the room while you remember? I have a question, if no one else does. Could you tell us more about the stage adaptations of this book and how those came about?
Yeah. There are lots of theatrical adaptation here in France, in Africa, in Congo, and in Guyana recently. But I have 3 film proposal and I refused. So, however, my latest book, the Bridge Tower Sonata, is going to be a film. You know, the scenario is made, they're looking for money, and because it's a story which works here, I guess. It's about music. It was a people do not know that the Kreutzer Sonata was written for Beethoven had a friend his name was Brichtauer, and he wrote the sonata called the Mulatto, Sonata Mulatica, because his friend was what they used to call mulatto, you know, mixed race, etc. And they played together, you know, and then they got a big dispute. Guess about what? About a woman. So about the woman, Beethoven wrote the what's called the Moon Sonata these days, Giulietta, and then Beethoven crossed out the dedication, like he did for the Eroica, and he dedicated it to Kreutzer, because Kreutzer was the best-known French musician at the time, and Beethoven was dreaming of playing the first of the Eroica in Paris. It didn't work. Kreutzer never played it. He said Beethoven doesn't know anything about writing sonatas. So that's the British house. So this is going to be a film. The scenario is made. Everything is body. And but for this one, I had 3 proposals. I refused because I'm afraid that it's all male. I want if there's a film, I want it to be made by a woman. That's all. That's why I refuse all 3 proposals.
We have a really excellent question on the Zoom from Veronique Tajo, who says, thank you so much for this very interesting conversation. What do you think of what is happening in West Africa today in terms of all the coups? How do you see democracy evolving on the continent? And what can we do as writers?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're following this. I think the coup, which are now very young colonel. I'm against coup personally. You know, I don't want coup. I'm from democracy and all that. But when you take a situation like Gabon, where the same family did ruling for 56 years, I mean, and there's no way to change, no democratic way. Election, they cheated completely. I mean, what can you do? So that was just I'm not for a coup, but there's some coups which are acceptable, at least just as a transition. And so this is the big problem we have now. And but 60 years we have independence. 60 years, more than 60 years. More than 60 years of independence, and we still just standing around. So yeah, it's a real problem. Those coups. In principle, I'm against them. But when you face a situation like in Gabon, and when you face a situation like in Congo, my country, the same guy is there, he's been 40 years. In Cameroon, Biya is there for, I don't know, 40 years. He's 89 now, 90, he doesn't want to leave. I mean, what do you do? What do you do? They made election, but you know already who's going to win the elections. So this is the conundrum we're facing.
We have another Zoom question, which is from Sarah Hannenberg, which is, am I correct in believing she's the translator of this work? Yes, which is so wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Sarah. That's so lovely. She says this is such an interesting conversation. She's correct. And she says, can you talk about what you're working on currently and what might be motivating the themes that you're addressing in your most recent work?
Well, what I'm working currently, I'm writing short stories. Because I don't have the courage to start a novel. So I'm writing a series of short stories, but it's not bad because it's kind of a snapshot of the present situation. So, and the problem is that in France, the short story doesn't work very much. It's not a major genre like in the US, like, in the Anglo-Saxon world, as we say. Every major writer has his short story collections, but not here, And yet you have master of short stories like Guy Maupassant, de Maupassant, all that. So I talked to a young publisher. He's not publishing me, but we're just in a conversation. And I said, why the short story don't work here? He said, well, it's because publishers don't offer them to the reader, So I don't know whether it's right or not. So anyway, I'm trying to take that challenge, try to publish short stories.
We have time for one last question in the room, if anyone wants to be so brave. No? All right, let's have a final round of applause then.
Okay. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for discussing this wonderful book, and thank you, Will, for moderating this conversation. And thank you, everyone who joined us tonight in person and online. Just a couple notes before you all head out about upcoming events that I'd love to point out to you. We have our inaugural Scholar of Note, Lady Hubbard, visiting starting on Friday, which we're so delighted about. And she'll be offering a special exclusive preview of her current writing project on Tuesday. There will be a cocktail reception following the conversation, if that interests you. She's an incredibly talented writer of historical fiction. Her work spans genres, forms, voices. She's one of the most innovative figures of our times, so it's such an incredible opportunity to be able to hear her speak. She's also going to be holding a writing workshop, so if you're interested in writing, I highly encourage you to look into that. We also are going to be having a panel about talking about race in France, which is going to be interesting, and it's a challenging subject to confront, so we're really looking forward to diving into that. That will be on October 3rd. And then we're so delighted to announce that we'll be hosting BJ Novak and W. David Marks in conversation as part of a special new marquee series spotlighting the most innovative and interesting voices of our time. So seats for that are already selling out very, very fast. If you're interested, reserve them now because they will be gone in a matter of days. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. As a final note, we are an independent, nonprofit institution. Events like these are made possible through volunteer work, through the work of Alfonso, through the work of Emma, our event assistant, and through the contributions of donors who support conversations like this. So thank you in advance if you're able to donate. You are as much a part of this conversation in this institution as everyone else who put this event together, and we really, really appreciate that. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So thank you. Have a lovely evening, and see you soon.